You're listening to The Creative Imposter, episode 127. Welcome to The Creative Imposter, where we explore the intersection of who you are and what you create. I'm your host and producer, Andrea Klunder, and today I've brought my friend, colleague, and teacher, Mira Binzen, to the show as part of our series on Not Your Typical Self-Care to talk about essential oils. Now, you may be thinking, Andrea, essential oils are the epitome of the bubble bath and pedicure style of self-care. Or you may be thinking, essential oils are always sold by those schmarmy network marketing pyramid schemey folks. Or you might be unsure of what essential oils even are. Or you might be thinking, ooh, I love essential oils, gotta catch them all. Seriously, I've never caught a Pokemon, but you should see my impressive collection of tiny little amber bottles filled with liquid delight. And well, I wanted to have Mira come on because her expertise and background are anything but typical. I first met Mira when I was a newly minted yoga teacher more than 10 years ago, and I was looking for a way to specialize, to add to my repertoire, and quite frankly, figure out some way to make money in this new career path, which wasn't so much a path as a wide open grassy field full of lovely flowers and snakes and sun and no protection from the elements. But that's a story for another time. Mira is the co-founder of Global Family Yoga, a certification and training program for children's yoga teachers rooted in both her passion and practice of yoga and philosophy and her love and study of child psychology, development, and communication disorders. If you want to learn more about Mira's story, go all the way back over 100 episodes to episode 21 of The Creative Imposter, and we'll link that for you, of course, in the show notes for this episode, along with all of the other resources and goodies we'll mention today at thecreativeimposter.com/127. Well, let me tell you what I learned about teaching yoga to children, plus my experience in theater, and yes, children's theater too, landed me some pretty great gigs during the years where income was slim and life and business for this creative imposter were difficult. And it turns out I adore doing yoga with children. One of the many things I missed during this pandemic. But what does any of that have to do with essential oils? First, a definition. Essential oils are concentrated oils distilled from plant material containing aromatic phytochemicals that purportedly have various beneficial properties. Second, I have been sniffing and using essential oils on and off ever since I was introduced to them early on in my yoga days, and I have no idea whether my experiences are science or placebo, but I really don't care. Third, just like teaching children's yoga helped see me through challenging times, blending essential oils has also seen me through much emotional turmoil. For example, when I was in the hospital following a mastectomy and reconstruction, the nurses would love coming to my room. I was in the gastrointestinal wing, you see, overcrowding in the place where I normally would be. And so they joked that my room smelled better than anywhere else in that wing due to the assortment of oils that I was using for myself. I wasn't spraying them around the room. I was just smelling them personally and then in some cases massaging them into my skin. Not to heal anything per se, but to help me with my mood and my energy. And just like children's yoga, essential oils are something Mira and I have in common. And side note, when used mindfully, essential oils in the context of children's yoga can win your way into any young yogi's heart. So here's what we're going to do. The first half of this episode, Mira and I are talking about the concept of self-regulation, which is basically what all of us have been thrust into the deep end of figuring out how to do this past year plus. I've come across a number of different ways to describe and define self-regulation, but the way I understand it is being able to navigate and manage your moods and energy so as to make choices that take into account what's best in the long term, not just immediate gratification, soothing, or numbing. In fact, it's a lot of what Lisa Lackey and I were talking about in episode 126. Okay, and really this whole self-care series. Then, once we've talked self-regulation, we will take a short stretch break. And after that, we'll get into how essential oils can support us in this act of self-regulation and beyond. And now let's breathe easy and get into talking about self-care with Mira Binzen. I resist the word self-care, and I kind of cringe when I hear it sometimes because either it's become some kind of commercialized buzzword or it's become kind of wishy-washy. And I don't think it should be that. But tell me, when I say, oh, let's talk about self-care, what does that bring up for you?
Yeah, it's kind of like the word yoga. It's been culturally appropriated in a way that it's taken on a meaning bigger than the word itself. And yeah, so self-care to me is sort of a radical act of making sure that your tank is full and that you've got the resources you need to be who you came here to be. It may or may not be a bubble bath. It may be saying no to that second glass of wine at the end of the night, or taking a break from a relationship or a schedule so that you can recharge. Self-care is being aware of and caring about yourself so that you can be yourself.
And so for you, when you say radical acts of making sure your tank is full, I feel like you, Mira, probably have a whole menu of small things, big things, fluffy things, deep things that consists of. What does your menu look like?
Well, it definitely does include a bubble bath and a glass of wine on some days. It also includes the deeper philosophy of yoga and the yamas and the niyamas. Being honest with ourselves is self-care, because when we're not being honest with ourselves, it's easier to fall out of balance. So it's not always soft and delicious like a piece of chocolate. It sometimes can be very challenging, and there can be a lot of rigor and discipline to it. And I think that's where the word gets misunderstood or misused, because everyone equates it with a bubble bath, and not many people equate it with the discipline that we need to get up when we need to get up to do what we committed to ourselves to do.
Rigor and discipline, that sounds terrible.
That's my yoga background, right? I come from a yoga tradition that's pretty serious. We sit up straight with our legs crossed on a cement floor for 6 hours a day.
That is like when I was teaching meditation more consistently, everyone would come to me and sign up for my intro to meditation classes and say, oh, I want to learn to meditate so I can relax. And I'm like, that's probably not what's going to happen. Eventually, like the long-term residual effect, yes, you can be more calm in difficult situations. You can have your resources about you. You can have more presence of mind. You can have more space so that you're not being so reactive. But in the short term, sometimes meditation can be very confronting. So we're having this conversation towards the end of 2020, probably the worst year I've ever experienced in my 41 years on this planet. And for many months this year, I could not meditate. I could not, because it was so confronting. I didn't like what I was feeling, experiencing. And so I'm wondering how the past few months have been for you in terms of like this rigor and discipline, and also taking care of yourself, and also recharging your tank amidst so many challenges and changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be the discipline to take a nap as well. But for me personally, I had a very big change in my life. I bought a home. I've always been a happy renter my whole life.
Yeah.
And so that's a really big financial commitment. And, we were looking for homes during this COVID crisis, and can we get into the house and how does that work? So the self-care has been even more important in regards to daily meditation practice. And for me, I like to use the repetition of sound. That really helps my racing mind, because it's like throwing it a bone. I'm not trying to create this big, empty, open pasture in my mind. I'm trying to keep my mind on one thing instead of 5 million things. So repetition of sound or mantra is a part of my daily meditation practice. And I actually made a 100-day challenge for myself, commitment to meditate every day and do 3 sun salutations a day. So if I do nothing else, I'll get in 3 sun salutations. and 10 minutes of meditation. That's like the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found that having a set commitment for a set period of time helps me to show up. And then I've got little games and triggers and progress reports that feed my monkey brain with that dopamine for rewards, like you're on day 37. It's like, yes, I can do it. And then it goes back to 0. It's really defeating. So there's something to like making it for that 38th day.
Yeah. So when I reached out to you, for some reason, the word self-regulation was popping into my mind. I'm hoping that you can define it a little bit for us and also talk a little bit about why it's so stressful. So you and I were just talking about how you have to go teach a yoga class in front of a different camera inside your home. Like you have to commute very short distance to get to your yoga class after this.
Yeah.
And same, I have things that I used to commute actually in a vehicle to get to. And now it's just like, oh, now I need to switch from Google Meet to Zoom or to Squadcast or to whatever it is that I'm using. So if I'm not having all that travel and transit time, why am I still so exhausted by the end of the day?
Yeah, cognitive dissonance is exhausting, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of uncertainty, and uncertainty is very stressful and very exhausting. So it would be surprising if we were not exhausted. And you've heard the word self-regulation because it's basically our tagline in our kids' yoga program. So Global Family Yoga, I always say, helps children develop self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-mastery. And so self-regulation to me comes out of my work as a developmental therapist, working with children with sensory processing issues. So the first step is to recognize what's out of balance, what needs to be regulated, and then to have a set of tools to make that adjustment. There's emotional regulation, there's behavioral regulation, like I'm not going to do that because it's not good for me. And then there's also physiological regulation, cooling down your body temperature, slowing down your heart rate, deepening your breath, improving your circulation. So we're regulating our emotions, our moods, our behaviors, and our physiology, whether or not we are bringing in that awareness. I joke a lot when I'm teaching kids yoga. I hope nobody takes it wrong, but I'm like, yeah, and then you go have a cigarette. Kids just run around the room and scream because they don't know what to do. And we'll have a cigarette. Both are trying to meet that need to self-regulate, but in different ways. And so I think self-regulation is just that. It's a way to rebalance. Our bodies will always seek regulation or homeostasis, that sense of balance. In yoga, we say balance. In the medical world, they say homeostasis. It's the same thing, but self-regulation is the process of bringing yourself back into balance, homeostasis, which our body is always seeking. And we can either support that or disrupt it and get in the way of it.
It's like a fine line. It's like a daily struggle in my brain between I feel fatigued. In the beginning of the whole COVID thing and the shelter in place, when I thought it was going to be super temporary and short, like a couple weeks, it was fine. It was freaky. I wanted more information, but I was like, okay, I can do this. 3 weeks, no problem. 4 weeks, no problem. It's not going to be bad. And so I was able to stay on like a functional level energetically. There was heightened everything. But then when it started to become apparent that it was going to drag on, I got very tired. And I did not want to do, I was like, who are all these people like baking bread and learning languages? Like, I really cannot be bothered to do anything but watch Netflix and nap and eat packaged foods because I cannot even make food for myself right now. And I really sunk into that just very heavy. I know in Ayurvedic terms, we would call it tamasic, right? This very like heavy space. It was almost like I wanted to go into some weird bear-like hibernation. And then there was a shift. My energy started to come back. Things started to change. I started to make plans. And then I got into this hyper creative mode where I was like, okay, I lost a few clients due to COVID. So now I didn't lose them. That sounds awful. No, they just like scaled back on what they were doing or switched to cheaper services that are not from me.
Lost the work.
Something else. I lost the work. And so then I was like, okay, what can I do? What can I add to my business? What can I change? How can I do this? How can I do this? Staying up really late at night. And, so it was like this complete pendulum swing. And now I feel like I've gotten into more of a good balance and a good flow, but it goes between I feel tired, I feel stressed, I feel overwhelmed, my body wants to rest. And some people will say, you know what? Of course, we all feel stressed. We all feel this overwhelm. We all feel this cognitive dissonance. Let yourself rest. Let yourself take that extra time. Be gentle on yourself. Be kind to yourself. But then there's also a certain point where it just spirals, right? Where it just becomes worse and worse. And you need to bring in that discipline and rigor. That was a very long-winded way of coming to this question of how do you know when to succumb to those messages or feelings that you're getting, to be gentle on yourself, just rest, don't push yourself. And when is it time to like give yourself the energetic pep talk, change something up and drink a green smoothie or sniff some essential oils, which we're going to talk about in a second. Like, how do you know?
Ultimately, I would say the answer is your intuition. We're always being guided. And that guidance usually shows up as a form of body sensation or lighting up, whatever that is, visually or auditorially or as a body sensation. But I don't know. I mean, resting is always good because it's in the resting that you get that insight about when it's time to go. And, this whole thing that's going on, the reptilian brain, our primitive brain has a very, 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 very strong imperative for survival, not enjoyment, not success, just survival. And when things are different, we go into alarm mode. That's why routine is so important. You'll see when people are, for whatever reason, their homes are destroyed or whatever, and they go into a temporary housing situation, they quickly set up routines. We really need routines. So our reptilian brain isn't on high alert / alarm mode all the time. And that's what's happening. We're in alarm mode because every day it's a new set of circumstances. Oh, we're going this way. Oh, no, we're not. We're going the other direction. And the uncertainty is tugging at our reptilian brain. Safety, this isn't safe. So every day you wake up not knowing if you're going to survive the day on a very primitive level. And so I think rest is truly important, deep rest. And then, like you say, resting can kind of lean into lethargy, which can lean into low moods. And that's a slippery slope. Some of us are more susceptible to the effects of low moods. Some of us get stuck in low moods more than others. And that's a dangerous place to be. We don't want to joke around in that area. So balance might be a 10-minute walk in the afternoon. And then when you're feeling more up like it might mean a 30-minute walk twice a day. So any little bit of movement, whether that's movement in your body or just movement in your mind, like thinking about something fun, calling a friend and having a great conversation can take you out of that downward spiral. And so how do you know is a question that only you can answer for yourself when we're paying attention, but we're kind of trained to not pay attention. We're trained to look at the next ad that pops up in front of our faces. And so again, it goes back to meditation. That morning, daily introspective time trains us to open the closet door. Some days you're like, oh no, I can't declutter this closet this morning, but we're in the habit of opening the closet door every day. Some days you're like, okay, I can tackle this one box and organize all these clothes or whatever. And then when we get in the habit of opening that closet door every single morning, we get to see, oh, there's those things and there's this, and this is how I feel when this comes up. And it's from that place of more, how do I want to say that? Just internal awareness that we can make a better choice about the self-regulation.
You were just making me think of when I was seeing a therapist following my surgery last year. And it just dawned on me, I was having that same thing where it was like, part of me wants to do this. And part of me is telling me, no, you need to do this. And part of me wants to sleep. And part of me wants to be productive. And part of me, and she was like, okay, well, let's figure out how many different Andreas are having a conversation in your brain right now. And let's give them, like a character. So there was like apathetic Andrea that just doesn't care about any of this. And there was aspirational Andrea that's like, but we can do this. But this is, the potential, and this is the opportunity. And why don't we try this? Some people say they have a devil and an angel in their mind. I'm like, no, I have the most lethargic, laziest part of me in my mind, and also the most aspirational at the same time, all the time. And they are constantly playing a tug of war in my brain.
Well, you're speaking perfectly to the different aspects of our brain. The reptilian brain is the don't do it, it's not safe. And the prefrontal cortex is like, let's change the world. And so we literally do have that tug of war. There are these competing intentions, survival versus realizing your highest self. Those are pretty opposing things when you think about the choices you would make in the day. Do I just want to survive, or do I want to dent the universe?
Stretch break time. I told you we'd have one, didn't I? Are you sitting or standing or lying down? If you're lying down, this one's easy. Hug your knees in toward your chest, curling into a little ball and rock from side to side for a few breaths. Then stretch yourself into a long, full body stretch for a few and repeat. If you are seated off of the floor, come to the edge of your seat. Take your feet wider than your hips so there's a lot of space between your thighs, and let your arms hang loose in between them. And if you're standing, plant your feet about hip width distance. Let your arms hang comfortably by your sides and bend your knees ever so slightly throughout. We're going to roll down the spine into a forward fold and back up. Start with your head. Drop your chin towards your chest, and over a few deep breaths, slowly roll forward until you are now hinged from the hips into a forward fold. Now, since Mira's a children's yoga teacher, swing your arms from side to side like a gorilla. Sound effects optional. Now keep those knees bent, arms loose, and roll on back up to a tall spine. Head comes up last. We're about to get into some real talk on essential oils with Mira in this second half of the episode, and I want to tell you about the brand that Mira and I both use. And before you go get all squeamish about direct sales and network marketing, I want you to know that both Mira and I have experimented with different brands and companies over the years and have come to know, love, and trust the integrity of product sourcing and education that comes from Doterra. Yes, Doterra is sold through a network of what they call wellness advocates, and your experience will depend on who you work with to learn about and order these oils. But this is not a commercial for Doterra. Instead, what I want to offer is this. I've created something new over on Patreon, a crowdfunding platform where many independent creators are building community and offering goodies to their fans in exchange for financial support or patronage. And I'm offering you some bonus content, including a behind-the-scenes podcast with conversational outtakes from both The Creative Imposter and my other show, Podcast Envy. And the bonus for this episode is a handful of my secret recipes for my favorite custom oil blends for spring, including instructions on how to make and use them. To get your very own copy of my secret recipes, go to thecreativeimposter.com/bonus. The giving level is completely your choice of $3, $9, or $27 per month. And if you have any questions at all about essential oils, please reach out to me at andrea@thecreativeimposter.com or DM me on Instagram at thecreativeimposter. The links are in the show notes. And I wanted to ask you a question that now I think is not fair, because I realize that I'm not sure I can answer this question, which is, do you even know how you first originally discovered essential oils or were introduced to them?
I do. In fact, it was in 1995. It was my first trip to India. I ended up going to India every year for 5 years, from 95 to 2000. And on my first trip, one of my mentors, spiritual mentors, one of my mom's best friends, said to me, "You need to take a bottle of oregano to India with you." And I was like, "Oh yeah, smelling like a pizza is going to keep me healthy in India?"
Yeah, oregano isn't smelling the best.
Well, it smells just like a pizza, only 20,000 times stronger. But yeah, so it turns out oregano's an antimicrobial and actually does address quite a lot of the things that one would face in India. And so while I was traveling in India for those 5 years, I really became interested in natural health. I read that book by Dr. Andrew Weil, Spontaneous Healing. So I had this oil of oregano in my backpack and an autobiography of a yogi. And it just really kind of blew up my mind. I was like, wow, food as medicine and aromatic compounds as medicine and all this thing. And so personal use of essential oils has been for decades. And then educating people on the use has probably been about 10 years, because it fits so well with self-regulating and a yoga lifestyle and being in tune. And I like to say it's like yoga in a bottle. I want to teach people how to do alternate nostril breathing every morning, but it's just much easier to swab a little oil on the bottoms of your feet for a similar benefit to the nervous system.
Yeah, I think the concept of what did you just call it? Aromatic compounds, healing with aromatic compounds. I like the, I like the science. I think that yoga would have been my first introduction because, when you walk into the yoga studio, especially like the less gym, more like yoga studios,
Mm-hmm.
and they always have a particular smell. Like there's always a yoga studio thing. And hopefully it's not a hot yoga studio, so it's not like
Not that smell.
sweat. Sweaty bodies. I know one of the scents that for the longest time I didn't know what it was. There was a particular yoga studio that I went to that I was like, this place smells better than any place on the planet. And it took me a while to figure out that it was Palo Santo,
Mm-hmm.
which in that case they were burning, sticks of Palo Santo wood.
Mm-hmm.
And it would always trigger my mind to shift from whatever I was doing out in the world previously, whether it was work, whether it was transit, whatever it was, into the yoga space. And it created that instant mind shift for me. And then, you go from there to like, oh, lavender. Lavender sort of is the first introduction that most people have to a true essential oil, not oregano. Most people don't start with oregano, Mira. Oregano is intense. I love oregano, but it is intense.
Very hot. Yeah. Yeah. My friend was really getting excited about her oils, and her husband had a cold. And I told her, do not use oregano undiluted. It's an extremely powerful oil. And she put a drop of oregano oil under her husband's tongue, which is such a tender spot. And he thought he was going to die. And she's like, well, he's better. I'm like, but it's a little bit of a high cost.
Yeah. How would you describe essential oils, like on a really basic term? What are they? Where do they come from? And how does one begin to learn about them?
Well, like you said, they're the aromatic compounds of plants. We take plant material and put it in a steam distiller. It could be the flowers of the plant, like jasmine or lavender, rose, magnolia. It could be the leaves, like peppermint, eucalyptus, tea tree, or the stem, the bark, the roots. Vetiver is a root. Frankincense is a resin that kind of bleeds from the tree, like maple syrup. Copaiba is also like a syrup from the tree. So you just take the plant material, whichever part of the plant has those volatile aromatic compounds that have those healing constituents in them, steam distill them, and put them in a bottle. So they're 50 to 70 times as strong as herbs. And they're really powerful and they're really potent. And so they can be used in a lot of ways. And when you talked about going into the yoga studio and having that instant shift, that's one of the best uses of an essential oil is when you inhale it, those aromatic compounds are going in and shifting your brain chemistry. The limbic system, which is the seat of the emotions in our brain, and the olfactory system, which is our sense of smell, are very closely interrelated. And so we can use smell to shift our mood, get happy, calm down, focus. We can even pair essential oils with a positive experience like meditation. I have a meditation routine with essential oils, and it prepares my body and mind to meditate. So the smell of it is like, oh, now this is going to happen, right? So if you're having a good experience and you pair it with a smell, then when you smell that again, that good experience is going to be evoked for you. So that's a wonderful way to use essential oils, even for people who've been exposed to trauma, because you can repair a memory with a different smell and change that neurochemistry in the brain.
Mm-hmm. I love blending my essential oils. So every oil sort of has its own unique properties. It definitely has its own chemical constituents. And one thing that I find really interesting that I don't know if everyone necessarily pays attention to, like you mentioned how each oil comes from a different part of the plant, but then also there are certain chemical compounds, like, most citrus oils will contain these compounds, but lime might have something different than lemon. And then there's the energetic components of each oil, like they each have their own personality. And so how does somebody get to know the personalities of those oils? Like, does it matter which essential oil that you use to pair with a meditation practice, or which essential oil you're using to help shift you out of a lower mood or something like that? Or does it just mean that you just pick one? Like, how do you choose?
Well, some people are really interested in and excited about the chemistry. I don't know a ton about the science of it because it doesn't resonate with me, but I like what you said about the personality of oils. There's limonene and beta caryophyllene and all of these things and different ratios of these chemical constituents do have a different effect on the body. Like limonene is the juicy fruit chemical in the citrus oils. So whether it's grapefruit or wild orange or lime or lemon, they're going to be uplifting and cleansing. So you can use it to clean your countertops. You can use it to clean your bad mood. And then tree roots and tree bark, you can imagine that that's going to help you feel more grounded, more stable, more embodied. Like patchouli is an oil that really helps you to feel more physical. And so the personality of the oils, I think you learn by experience, and blends come blended, like an immune support blend, a respiratory support blend, a digestive blend. So we don't have to know the science to effectively use essential oils in our home. And one thing I would hope would not happen is that someone would let that lack of knowledge about the science of the oils keep them from experiencing oils. Like you peel an orange and it smells delicious and you eat it and it's wonderful and you don't have to understand the process behind it. So that's what I would definitely encourage people, is to experience the oils. For a lot of people, lavender is very calming and relaxing, but that's not the case for me. When I use lavender at night, I'm like, okay, what should we do? Right? It's clarifying for me, but it doesn't help me fall into sleep. So that personal experimentation and keeping track, self-awareness is a great way to start playing with oils and learning about them.
Yeah. I know it's really funny because one of my things that I enjoy doing is making custom blends for people. It's one of those intuitive practices where I don't always know why I'm choosing a particular oil for them. And then they smell it and they're like, oh, I love this. Is that geranium I smell? And I'm like, how did I know? How did I know that's what you wanted? But that thing about different oils being really personal, for example, so many perfumes, like commercial perfumes, are made with jasmine. And we can, get into like whether they're actually using real jasmine or whether they're using synthetic approximations of jasmine. But like jasmine is a really common fragrance profile. I cannot stand the smell of jasmine.
I remember that about you.
I cannot. Jasmine tea. Oh, I don't know what it is, but like everything in my body tenses up and I get so cringy. And some people just think it's the best smell in the world. You're in the best smell camp.
Yes, I love jasmine. That's a great example. They're so subjective.
So personal and so subjective. What are some of your favorite blends for helping us navigate difficult times?
I have a favorite blend and it's called Balance. And I put it on the bottoms of my feet every morning and every night before bed. And it truly does help me feel balanced. It's got frankincense in it, blue tansy, blue chamomile, which is calming. And so that grounding, for me, frankincense is what I like to say is it's spiritually grounding. So it just helps me be present with myself. So that's definitely a good oil for these times. And then on a daily basis, it might be, I want to feel a little cheery and uplifted. So more citrus oils, or I want to feel grounded and stable. Cedarwood is one of my favorite oils too. It's a very grounding oil. I like copaiba a lot. And copaiba is an oil that really helps to regulate the systems of the body. So this is so cool. There's a system in the body called the endocannabinoid system that was actually named after the cannabis plant, because the cannabis plant regulates this system in the body that modern science kind of ignored. Like they ignored the enteric nervous system, the gut brain. Was discovered in the 80s. And they're like, that's kind of weird. It doesn't make sense that we would have more neurons in our belly than we do in our brain. So let's just kind of just set that aside and not really talk about it in the textbooks. Same is true for the endocannabinoid system. And so copaiba is like cannabis in that it regulates this system, which regulates all the other systems. So just by using this oil every day, you can put it under your tongue, you can diffuse it, you can put it on your skin. You're helping your body to come back into homeostasis. So for the long term, day after day, using oils really helps your body do what it's going to do anyways. It's one of those things that supports your body coming back into well-being, into balance. And so those kinds of tree oils, I think for me, and if you want to go into Ayurveda, my constitution is lots of air and space. So I'm always looking for a tether for my kite.
Well, and I think it's really interesting that you describe it that way, because one of the misconceptions, I think, with essential oils, which could also be a misconception with herbal remedies, with acupuncture, with so many different healing modalities, especially the natural healing modalities, a lot of times people have a misconception that the thing is going to heal you or the thing is going to cure you. And you'll get pushback And even I think sometimes people mistakenly promote that notion of, oh, you're going to take this and then it's going to cure you of, whatever it is. But the way that you just phrased it is it's supporting your body or helping your body do what it needs to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is what people have been using for thousands of years. And then it kind of fell out of use when we had, about 100 years ago, 150 years ago, we discovered penicillin and that silver bullet where you take a pill and it actually saves your life. And we became so enamored with that concept that now we rely on that notion. Take a pill and it's going to just make everything better. And that's not always the case, certainly not the case for chronic conditions and that kind of a thing. And so it's really going back to natural medicine, what was true thousands and thousands of years ago, partnering with nature, living in tune with the cycles of nature, using plants in nature to support our body. Modern medicine forces a change in the body or masks a symptom, which is sometimes exactly what's needed. And there's a lot of times when nudging our body in the direction of its own well-being is what's needed, or letting the body rest enough to take care of itself. To me, that's what the plants are doing. The plants are supporting the body rather than coming in and taking over the body.
You also mentioned that they're so super concentrated. These oils, they're so potent. They're so strong. We talked about do not put straight oregano oil on your tongue or under your tongue ever, please, for the love of God. So the particular oil brand that Mira and I both use is Doterra. And the blend names are not like if you search another brand and they happen to have a blend named Balance, it's not going to be the same Balance blend that Mira was saying. Like that is a proprietary specific blend to Doterra, but they have a blend called On Guard, which I'm a huge fan of. It's probably one of their top selling blends, I would say. I love the way it smells and it's good for like fighting bacteria. And one day I was sweaty and I felt like I smelled a little bit and I was like, oh, I have On Guard in my bag. And without thinking, I just put some On Guard on my armpits.
Tell us how that felt.
And of course, my pores were open, right? Because I'd been sweating. And so On Guard has cinnamon
Andrea's show
oil.
of what not to do with oils.
Yes, cinnamon oil, clove.
Yeah,
like
those are also very hot, like oregano.
Hot, strong oils. And it was not the right use for that oil. So I'm curious, when somebody wants to start experimenting with these, they just need to be used properly. So what do you recommend?
Well, that's what I do is I educate people about proper use. And I think that's so important, and you mentioned Doterra and this company. I've worked with other brands and other oils, and I'm just super impressed with their testing and their sourcing. They make sure that that oil is pure and in its purity is much safer to use. If you're using an oil that is somehow adulterated, the safety of that isn't known. And so one is to have a high quality oil in the first place. And then the other is the support of education. Think about going to a natural foods store and standing in the aisle and looking at something and saying, I wonder what this is. I wonder how it works. I wonder how to use it. And some nice person coming up next to you and saying, hey, this is what this is. This is how you use it. Put this here in your house and use it at this time. And that's what we do. So Doterra intentionally chose that model of having what's called wellness advocates to sit down knee to knee and educate you. And not just once, here's your oils, good luck, have fun, but ongoing. And I think that's so important because it is like learning a foreign language. At first, people really don't know. People say, oh, is that how you use that oil? And to me, it's so second nature. I do it, just every day I'm grabbing oils and doing this and doing that. A lot of people are just like, what are these strange little amber bottles? And they'll take their oils and put them on a shelf and look at them and go, oh, those are cool. But they don't actually take them down and use them. So I think ongoing education is super important, which is pretty easy to come by. The internet's a pretty scary place to be informed about it. You get a lot of different opinions. And just like I said earlier, personal use, using it, noticing the results that you have. If you do get an oil in your eye or you put straight oregano, you can dilute it with a fractionated coconut oil. I had someone text me the other day, I touched my face with cinnamon. What should I do? And I told her to go into her kitchen and get a fatty-based oil that could be olive oil or almond oil or fractionated coconut oil and rub it onto the area where the oil had touched the skin, and it dilutes it on contact. And I checked in with her the next day. I said, how's your cinnamon face? And she said, oh, it's better, thanks.
Having things properly labeled, Doterra is great at labeling which oils should be used diluted. And I think just in general, when they're new to you, it's a good idea to use them diluted, just to experiment with what concentration is right for you. Of course, if you're using it aromatically, like putting it in an oil diffuser, it's going to be diluted with water.
Yeah, I'm pretty conservative with my use. I lean towards more dilution. Some people just put lots of oil on undiluted, and it's just not necessary. They're so potent, you just don't need it. I'm really into room sprays right now. I like to take a glass spray bottle and do like what you were saying, making custom blends and just kind of pick out different oils and make room sprays for different intentions. Like have an intention, find some oils and put them in a spray bottle with distilled water and then just spray them around. I love the effect that has.
I like what you just said about have an intention. Like when you're going to experiment with making your own blends, which to me, that's my favorite part of essential oils is experimenting with your own blends. Some people are just like, nope, I'm just going to stick to the singles and the pre-made blends.
Yeah. So some people are like, yeah, I want to make my own blends. And some people are like, oh no, I don't know how to do this. So I can't use oils. And that's just not true. So I like that there's that full spectrum. There is the kind of ready-made things for people who just like, I just want the job done. Right. And then there's all the single oils, you know, that you can blend in infinite varieties, and on different days those blends are going to affect you differently, have a different mood for you, and that's just so nice. And then pairing things like, this is my blend for this activity, like when I'm going to do this, I like to use these 3 oils blended together, and then it pairs that with your brain. Your brain's like, okay, I'm ready to do that thing, that activity.
It goes back to what you were saying in the beginning before we even talked about essential oils, which is like creating these routines. You can make it more woo self-care language if you call it a ritual, right? You can create these rituals for yourself
in a powerful way. That hook to smell and the limbic brain, and then routine goes back to the reptilian brain.
Yeah,
the brain wants to know there's what's next, so we're safe. And so the ritual, really, it's a starting ritual, is just a great way to get the process going. And the more routine that becomes, the easier it is to get going with that next thing, especially in uncertain times, like you're saying.
Mira, is there anything else that you want to share with Creative Imposter listeners? I know there's like 10 hours worth of things that you want to share with listeners right now, but like, what is the most important message or the most important thing that we should keep in mind as we're exploring this idea of not just bubble baths?
You already know. You already know. That's what I want people to know. You know, we don't trust ourselves, or we wonder if we're doing it right or enough. And you are. Trust yourself. Trust yourself. You're here for a purpose, and that purpose will be realized.
Trust yourself and treat yourself. As a reminder, links to learn more about and connect with Mira Binzen will be in the show notes for this episode, in the description in your app, and at thecreativeimposter.com/127, along with a link to my secret essential oil spring recipes on Patreon. And Mira and I are all about education, safe, and pleasurable use of essential oils. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you are curious to learn more. Thank you to Edwin Ruiz for mixing this episode, Lisa Witter for the show notes, and Jovia Armstrong for our theme music. I thank you so much for listening, and this week, take a deep breath. What do you smell? Lavender, lemon, cedar, or something less pleasant? Fix that and have an uplifted mood